If there's one thing narcissistic parents or psychopathic parents hate the most, is whenever they get a child and the child turns out to be either neurodivergent or, is like a special needs child. I can wholeheartedly testify to this because the moment I came out of the womb, my father, who was a psychopath, he immediately hated me, even though he's the reason why I had said disabilities in the first place. The reason why they hate their, disabled or neurodivergent child is, narcissists are obsessed with image. And let's be honest, if you have, like, per se, a child who is, a pretty child or smart in school or doing well in school or is doing sports or anything like that that might, contribute to, the image of the family, then everyone is like, oh wow, your child is doing so well with, his soccer team or basketball team, or he draws well, he knows how to, horse ride well, or she's really good at skating, maybe she becomes a great, ice skater, whatever, figure skater, whatever. It pimps up the inflated ego of the narcissist even more. But let's say the child is born with a disability and is constantly fidgeting, is constantly losing attention, or is overly sensitive, or, has tendencies to, be over perfectionistic or miss things, or, on one hand, the child is maybe like very great at specific things in niche, interest, but then at the same time can't read or has difficulty with numbers or verbal speech impediments, that kind of stuff. So now we're getting into neurodivergence, dyscalculia, dyslexia, autism, ADHD, OCD, giftedness. Yes, giftedness is also neurodivergence. I'm going to make a separate video about that soon. And now the narcissistic parent actually hates that child, because the purpose of children in the eyes of a narcissist is to make them look good. The narcissist perceives their own children to be either promotional mirrors to promote their own quote-unquote personal brand. And that is, you need to be able to make everyone believe that we are a stable family and that we're a perfect family. And if you do not live up to that standard, then there's something wrong with you and we have to attack you. That's why narcissists always hate their children and will do anything, whatever they can, to either make other narcissistic children by making them believe that just because they have the last family name, that they actually mean something, or that if the child grows up disabled, divergent, anything like that, they're very quick. They're very quick to, throw projections of hatred onto their child or whatsoever, because narcissists hate everything and everyone that can actually damage their false sense of self. And why, you might ask? Because these things about neurodivergence or disabilities are most often, but not always, don't have to always be, also have to be the case, genetically related. So if your child grows up having ADHD, OCD, autism, giftedness, or dyslexia, dyscalculia, it's like 95% chance that it either comes from you or your partner, or it has been passed down, maybe like your grandmother had it, or your mother, your father had it, on whatever side. And narcissists don't want to admit the fact that they may come from a fucked up family or anything like that, so they build this entire fake image and narrative around them that, they're, high wealth, high class, wealthy, whatever it may be. They're very obsessed with this glamorous side of image to impress other people who could not give a fuck less about them. So they always thrive in small groups of people who, feed into that delusion. That's why they have this obsession with fame and grandeur, because the more people who believe in their lies and their false sense of self, the more quote-unquote empowerment they feel. But the moment the child grows up being, not their ideal, the narcissistic parent begins to resent and hate that child, because they think, well, how can a disabled child come from me and from my genes, because I perceive myself to be, superior, yada, 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 yada. So because the child actually reflects something that maybe a disability or neurodivergence isn't something that just happens, but is related to either the narcissist himself or herself and into their families. And the narcissist doesn't want to deal with that, because the narcissist is obsessed with the idea of an Aryan race, that whatever they produce and comes out of them is the next step of human evolution. Narcissistic parents also hate, their children with autism, because autistic children tend to be, also with ADHD, neurodivergent children in general, they tend to be extremely blunt. They don't know how to lie. They don't know how to, act the part and play the role, that kind of stuff. So whenever your narcissistic parent, goes out to like a party and the narcissistic parent brings you with him or her, and you're neurodivergent, you have OCD, ADHD, autism, giftedness whatsoever, and you immediately blurt out, blatant lies. Like if like a colleague of your narcissistic parent says, oh well, how's that business going, you immediately say like, well, my daddy doesn't have a business because he's a broke ass nigga, and everyone starts to look at you like, oh my god, your child is so frisky, da, 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 da. But the child is actually speaking the truth. But the narcissist doesn't want to hear that and doesn't want to believe that either, even though it's the truth. So the narcissist is embarrassed to be seen with a neurodivergent or disabled child because it hurts the image. It hurts the image that they're perfect. Because how can you be perfect but your children are a fucking mess? So that's why narcissistic parents always hate their neurodivergent child. And if you're neurodivergent or you have a disability, no matter what you do, you're never going to be loved by your narcissistic parents because you reflect everything that they hate about themselves, and that they actually fail to rise to the occasion to be the most ideal, parent that they claim to be to other people. And the thing about, narcissists is that they are very hypocritical and they don't actually really have a stable sense of self. Yet they're very domineering and trying to shape you into their ideal version of a fantasy that they can't attain themselves. So if you grew up with a neurodivergence, whether it's dyslexia, dyscalculia, autism, ADHD, OCD, giftedness, twice exceptionality, whatever it may be, and your parents hate you and always mocked you for your differences and that kind of stuff, your parents are most likely to be narcissistic, and the reason why they don't like you is because they were actually incapable of raising you, and that truth shocked them to the core, made them actually, realize that they were kind of shitty parents. Their ego couldn't handle it, and that's why they shadow banned you in that sense. They scapegoated you and did the most and got the least. So if you're the scapegoat and you're a neurodivergent scapegoat of your narcissistic family, don't take it personally. It's actually the fact that they fucked up and that they don't know how to be proper parents or know how to raise you. That's their problem, because they have, horrible emotional intelligence or a lack thereof. And that's the reason why they hate you. It's not about you. It's actually about them. So, yeah, carry on.